Welcome to the No More webinar series presented to you by Art Schools Network. If you're not able to be with us live, don't worry, or if you can't stay with us throughout this webinar, this will be posted on our website and on social media so that you can share it with your students and watch at your leisure. I'm happy to say we're on episode 2 with ACAD, the Association of Independent Colleges of Art and Design. This is about guiding your students through the application process, and the guest expert is their Assistant Director of Programs and Operations, Leanne Adams.
Oh.
I'm Christy Calloway, the host and Executive Director of Art Schools Network. Art Schools is a resource for members and non-members. This webinar, for example, given to you by ACAD, our sponsor, is made available for free, again, on our website. And art schools are any schools dedicated to the mission of giving students a career in the arts or just a really great future. Our membership type is public, private, charter, residential, elementary through college, conservatory, summer, nonprofit, all over the world. This map just shows you the United States, but we have members just over the border in Canada, across the pond in the UK, Singapore, and other great places. Today, I'm with Ms. Leanne Adams. As I mentioned, she's our guest expert.
Hello.
Thank you for coming, Leanne. I wanted to point out something interesting about you, that you, before ACAD was able to win you over in September 2012, that you were right out of school from RISD. You were at Christie's Auction House, and there's now a television series about your life. That is so inspirational.
Yep, just about my life.
Our members are creating tomorrow's artists, and the Association of Independent Colleges of Art and Design is a very sincere partner that has over 42 members itself. So I'm going to turn it over and let you tell our membership about your membership.
Sure. So thanks, Christy, and I'm happy to be here today. Our membership, the Association of Independent Colleges of Art and Design, also known as ACAD, is a membership organization of the 42 leading art and design schools in the U.S. and Canada. And here you can see a snapshot of our members. So all of our members are private, nonprofit, 4-year BFA degree granting specialized art and design schools. And you can see a snapshot of the logos from all of our member schools.
I wonder whoever had the job of putting that together. That's impressive.
This slide?
The slide and the collaborative. Yes, yeah. It's a metaphor for it.
Okay. So before I begin, I just want to say that I know that this time can be challenging for high school students and for art teachers. It can be a crunch time, and trying to get things done before the holiday break. I just want to remind everyone that the holiday break can actually be a really good time to work on portfolio pieces and to get last-minute application details sorted out. You know, I would urge your students to be using this time wisely and to also be researching the schools that they're applying to, organizing college visits, setting up visits, looking into potentially visiting schools that are a little farther away or out of state. Really use these next few months to your advantage. And this brings me to deadlines. Deadlines are looming. They're probably a source of stress for your students, and I just want to take you through an outline of some of the different deadlines that our schools offer. There are usually 3 categories. There's early decision, also known as early action, regular decision, and rolling admissions. And I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the pros and cons of each decision type and deadline type. So early decision, we are most likely past many of the early decision options being in mid-December. Early decision deadlines are usually in early November with notifications sent in December. And early decision, or early action as it's sometimes called, is a commitment to attend if admitted. So students who choose this option when they apply, this earlier deadline, are committing to attend this institution if they are accepted. So students should only choose this deadline if they truly want to attend the school they're applying to. Early decision isn't great for everyone. It is great for someone who is absolutely sure they want to attend. It is also great for students who have high grades in their sophomore and junior year. I would say about a B+ or higher. If a student is counting on their senior year grades to help their application, they should definitely wait and hold off for the regular decision deadline, because the admissions committee is not going to see those senior year grades when they look at the transcript that early on in the academic year. So I think that's a really good point for people to remember when choosing a deadline. There are a few other things to consider when choosing a deadline. Early decision deadlines tend to be a little bit more competitive for a few reasons. The first reason is that students with the best grades and highest level of commitment usually choose this deadline. So you're automatically competing against students with the best grades and the highest commitment. The second big reason is that there are actually fewer seats being given away during this first deadline, as colleges have to save ample space for the regular decision applicants. So not only are you competing against the best and most highly committed applicants, you're also vying for a smaller number of seats. So it's really a difficult deadline, and one that should not be taken lightly. Another misconception about early decision or early action is that applicants are given special treatment in the application process, or they're considered in a better light because they're applying early, and that is absolutely false. Applying early versus applying to the regular decision really has no basis on your application whatsoever and how your application is viewed. Okay, so moving on to regular decision. The regular decision deadline is usually in late January, early February, with notification arriving sometime in March to very early April. And this is when the bulk of applications flood into colleges.
Which is why you suggested this is a perfect time over the winter holidays for students.
Exactly. This is when your students are most likely submitting their applications or starting to think about submitting their applications.
And they need Wi-Fi and good advice. Okay.
Exactly. So some of our schools accept applications on a rolling basis, which means candidates can apply after the deadlines, but consideration is given based on space availability. So if you have a school that is a high priority school on your students list, then I would not recommend waiting until after the deadlines to apply, because students who submit after the deadlines, if rolling applications are accepted, will only be considered in light of space. So this is not something that a student should pursue if they truly want to attend an institution. Some of our schools, such as University of the Arts, only has rolling admissions. And University of the Arts, I think Christy is one of your members, and they only have rolling admissions. However, there is priority deadline for filing financial forms. So
it's got to be tied to something. I mean, there's a fiscal year or a calendar year or something.
Yeah. So if you are planning to, or your students are planning to apply to UArts, take note of the application deadlines for the financial forms, but there is no true deadline for submitting an application.
I think what I would do on a basic level would be just to get a basic calendar on the wall and throw all these dates out, and then most of the students it's great to be aware that there's an early decision and the commitment level and the good grades and the small slots, but then it also gets you geared up or scared or nervous or at least ready and preparing for the Christmas crunch or whatever you want to call it, the December, get it done for January, February, and then this rolling thing is for that student who's really not so sure. So I guess it kind of works out. Or
Exactly.
yeah,
or applying late. And I think the calendar suggestion is great. Get a big calendar and mark all of the deadlines, financial aid deadlines, application deadlines, in the school name. Hang it like over your head while you're sleeping, over your desk, on your desk at school, and just keep track of time, especially at this time of year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know just from friends who have college-age students and listening to schools, they're going through all that for people who are already enrolled now in January. So it's something that you have to do on every semester once you even enroll. It's something to get in a good habit of doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so moving on. Okay, applications. I think a lot of students run into some confusion here, so I want to just very clearly go through application options. I'm going to start with the Common Application. The Common Application is starting to be widely accepted across ACAD schools, although some ACAD schools do not accept the Common Application. Some of our schools, such as Ringling College of Art and Design in Florida, they only accept the Common Application. So students, teachers, counselors, take note what application the school requires. And if you are applying to schools that only accept the Common Application, you only have to fill out the Common Application once. You include the school's code, the CEEB code, which can be found in the admissions section of all college websites. You include that code on your Common Application, and then that Common Application gets sent out to all of the schools you're interested in. It's very convenient. Students can sometimes run into trouble with this because some of the schools they're applying to do not accept the Common Application, and they'll actually need to go to the school's website and find their school's online application specific to that college. And that can usually be filled in online and submitted online. In some cases, it can be printed out, and the student can write in their information and then mail it in.
What's an example of a school that has only their own application? I'm just curious.
I think some of the smaller schools like Cleveland Institute of Art, Oregon College of Art and Craft, Pacific Northwest College of Art. It's very clear in the admissions section of each school's website.
And those are really special locations, so if students have their heart set on those places, they better pay a lot of attention to that. So I hear what you're saying, yes.
Exactly.
Loud and clear.
And there are some advantages to using the Common Application. It can be really easy to track submitted documents and outstanding tasks right in the dashboard of the Common App.
I'm a fan of the Common App. 100%.
And students can set up system alerts, like we talked about the calendar. There's a calendar right in the Common App that will send an alert when a deadline is approaching. You can view application progress in the dashboard. Both options, the Common App and the online application, usually in SlideRoom, which is an online application management software, will allow students to save their form in progress, so they don't have to fill it all out in one sitting, which is great. And usually both the Common App and the school online form will allow students to submit some of the other required credentials right through that application.
That's fantastic. Yeah. That has just come such a long way. Folks have no idea, but that's just so wonderful that there's finally system alignment. And
system alignment, yeah. Another neat thing about the Common App and the school's online form is that students can actually invite their people who are writing their letters of recommendation for them right through that software. So the software will actually generate an email as long as the student has the email address of the person they wish to invite right through that software.
We've encouraged folks from our end to use those online portfolios and audition sites because from our perspective, it helps them start to learn how to build their portfolio even when they're not ready to submit. So I understand you don't have to wait till it's time to submit your college application. Students could go now and start to build that. I know that it's available, and I know there's a couple options, but I don't want to over-promote anybody over another.
One important thing I want to note, just from my experience as an admissions counselor, on the application form, whether it's the Common App or the school's online application, there is a section for students to note their activities and interests. And it's like several lines where students can write in or type in their activities and interests. And it usually on the other end, the reviewer's end, it can look very jumbled and it's hard to read. And my suggestion is, even though you're outlining this information or your students are outlining this information on the application, I always suggest sending in with the application a resume. So students can take the time to format a nice resume and to highlight their extracurricular activities, volunteer work, any type of overseas travel, anything that they want to draw the admissions committee's attention to that might get lost in the jumble of information on that application form. Pull it out and send it in as a resume. Just because the school doesn't ask for a resume doesn't mean you can't send one. Any type of supplementary material that you want to put in that application package, you should feel free to do so.
That's fantastic. And a lot of kids have these days advocacy experience or social activism or fundraising for their own program or
and these are great things. Yeah, these are great things to highlight to the selection committee, and they can definitely get lost on that application form.
That's okay. This is such good advice. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move to transcripts and tests. So all applicants to all ACAD schools must provide official transcripts of all secondary academic work through the most recent grading period. School counselors can actually submit the students' transcripts right through the Common Application. Transcripts can also be emailed to admissions representatives at the student's college of choice, or they can be sent in the mail. So yeah, students have a number of ways to get their transcripts to admissions, which is nice. And then one thing that I think students forget about, I know I'm sure many of the students at your member schools, Christy, are enrolled in advanced placement courses.
Yes.
And many of our schools actually grant credit based on the successful completion of the AP exams. There's usually a minimum score.
I got to jump in. That's so exciting because some of our schools are AP school-wide or IB AP school-wide.
Exactly.
So the kids, they're literally enrolled in all AP and IB classes. So I hope they're really listening. I'm so excited about that. Fantastic.
It's usually there's usually a maximum number of credits, of course, that the student can transfer in. So usually between 3 and 6, and students need to get a minimum score on that final exam, which is usually a 4 or a 5. In many cases, it's the highest score, which I think is 5. And these credits can be applied to art history, English, literature, natural sciences, math, and the social sciences. Yeah, and especially that first year in college, I think if a student has those AP credits, they can take one of those liberal arts courses off their plate that first year can be really helpful.
Sure, it helps them if they want to accelerate in what they really want to do, like take 2 of something else or an extra jewelry design or whatever they're surveying. That's fantastic. I think people should pay attention to that. Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, of course. And so for SAT or ACT, I know that a lot of students freak out a little bit about these standardized tests, especially students who pursue the arts. I know that's not true across the board, but this is a requirement at all of our schools. It's usually required that students take the SAT or the ACT, and the subject tests are usually not required. There are a couple of things I should go over here with these tests. They are not looked at solely as the basis for a student gaining admission or not. These test scores are really used as a complement to the other application materials the student submits. And if your students are receiving around a 600 on each section of the SAT, including the writing, they're getting about average scores. And for the ACT, it's a 28 for the composite score. I would say shoot for that range. Anything higher is fantastic. The scores I just noted are average. If they're falling in that average score range, they should do fine in the admissions process as long as their other credentials are up to par. And I would say take the test again if the student does not reach that minimum, or excuse me, that average score. It would definitely be in that student's best interest. Whatever the student can do to heighten their scores or make their admissions package better in some way is worth the extra step. So definitely try taking the test again. These tests were designed for students whose first language is English. Many admissions committees will take that into account when they're reviewing applications for students whose second language is English, which is why tests on the English language can be very important to students whose first language is not English. And that brings me to this slide.
I want to go back real quick.
Sure.
With regards to the writing is just so important, and so many admissions programs at the high school level require a writing component in their process because they want to know that they have someone who can articulate or express themselves. And so good schools are producing students that are able to do this, and this is good advice for those kids who just need a little extra push. And now the unfortunate thing is that we do have the need to have these English language tests, and it's going to only increase. So explain the TOEFL and so on.
Exactly. English proficiency is really a prerequisite for acceptance into ACAD schools, especially with the emphasis on communicating ideas and feedback. Defending artwork and critiques is a huge part of the time spent at an ACAD school. So you really need to have an understanding and a firm grasp on the language. And we spoke about these English language tests briefly in the last slideshow, Christy, so I just want to quickly go through again, just because it's an important point to emphasize. Most of our schools have minimum scores on both of these tests. The TOEFL stands for the Test of English as a Foreign Language, and IELTS is the second test, and it stands for the International English Language Testing System. And most schools will give the option of either test. I do know from my experience at admissions that the IELTS test is the more complicated test. So something for your students to keep in mind when taking these tests. Many of our schools require a minimum test results on either or both of these tests. So the minimum scores for the TOEFL usually fall between the 60 to 93 mark on the internet-based test. And for the IELTS, it's between a 6.0 and a 6.5. And an important note about the TOEFL, it can take up to 6 weeks for scores to be sent after the test is taken. So students should plan to take this test well in advance of the application deadline. That said, this shouldn't make or break whether or not a student chooses to apply to a school. If they were not able to get into a test center fast enough, if they didn't realize they had to take this test and the application deadline is at hand, I would suggest sending a letter with the application materials outlining what happened, when you plan to take the test, so give your scheduled test date, and then when you expect to receive the scores. So count 6 weeks out from that test date and include that in a brief letter with the application materials.
That's great advice. So that's great. So that there'll be a pending decision. These results come in and get combined. So
Exactly.
we'll consider that. That's very nice.
And in the admissions process, there is, in many of our schools, offer a wait list and then a specific wait list for students for who they're waiting on to take the TOEFL or the IELTS. So this also holds true if you have a student who took the test and didn't get sufficient scores. They can always include a letter with their scores saying, hey, I know I didn't reach the minimum score. I'm very confident that I can, however, and I'm planning to take the test again on this date, and I should have the scores by this date.
That's smart. That's great. That's great.
Okay, so I'm going to move on. So essays and more. So all of our schools in the application criteria require at least one example of writing, sometimes two, usually in the form of a statement of purpose or an artist statement. And these writing samples can be a great place to highlight accomplishments. Really use this opportunity to have the selection committee get to know the student. The student can talk about really anything they wish, but this is the only opportunity where the student can kind of embellish, really fill out a full picture on what they look like and who they are as people, what drives them artistically, what they hope to get out of their college education. It can also be a good place to talk about lapses in grades. If a student had a health problem, if there were issues in the family that had an effect on grades, this could be a great place for a student to say, hey, you know, I'm a great applicant. I know my grades in sophomore year, second semester, took a huge dip. These were the stressors going on in my life at the time. That can be a really great way for a student to convince the selection committee to give them the benefit of the doubt if their grades have dropped. I always recommend keeping the writing samples to one page. Some students really like to go on. I would say no more than 2 pages. Selection committees review hundreds upon hundreds of applications. After 1 page, they're really just skimming. So say everything you want to say in 1 page. I touched on this earlier. Submitting a resume, even though it's not required, is a great way to outline any other extracurricular activities, volunteer work, etc. You can also talk about these things in your writing samples. And then submit notes about upcoming test dates. I should have also mentioned that if a student received lower than average scores on either the SAT or the ACT, they can do the same thing. They can send a letter, hey, you know, I know my scores are lower than average. This is what was going on in my life at the time. I've rescheduled to take the test on this date, and you should have my updated scores in your hands on this date. It really shows a level of conscientiousness, I think, on the student's part. And it also shows that the student has that forethought to send a note when the selection committee might be wondering, hey, what's up with this student? They look great, except what's this 450 in the math section of the SAT? Letters of recommendation. Christy, I know we talked about this a little on the last webinar. Make sure your students are asking people who they have a good relationship with to write these letters. I've read countless negative letters of recommendation. When you're reading hundreds of them a day, reviewing applications, these negative recommendations really stand out. It's just really funny how many students pick people they don't have good relationships with to write these recommendations.
And I'm also like stunned that the teachers would write them anyways, but or write ones that are negative and not just say, no, I decline.
Exactly.
And
yeah, the student never sees them. The student
Yeah.
never sees them because the recommenders send them directly to the school.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Well, I know that a lot of students unfortunately come from schools where there might only be one dynamic visual art teacher and they're hit up with every kid wanting to go. How can the students make sure they get a sincere one from the right person? What advice were you going to give?
Maybe have a conversation with that person ahead of time. Hey, I was thinking about asking you to write a letter of recommendation. Feel that person out. And not just art teachers have to write these recommendations.
Of
Anyone
course.
who can speak about the student's work ethic, passion,
Leadership
can write these, even if
skills.
it's a math teacher or science teacher.
That makes sense. Absolutely.
Students should definitely stay away from having their parents write a recommendation. You'd be surprised how many recommendations I would read from parents. Obviously, you're going to advocate for your own child.
That's adorable, but that's terrible at the same time.
It's terrible, yeah.
That's funny. Now, I wanted to follow up on the letters of recommendation. So does schools mind if a student has one and then he submits or she submits to all of the places they're applying, or do these have to be individual to each school, or is it on a case-by-case?
No, most schools know that a student is applying to more than one school. So a recommender can, write a general letter and then submit it through the Common Application site or the school's online site. They will get an email notification saying, this student has requested that you write a letter of recommendation for them. Please follow this link. Yeah, it's really easy for them to provide that. And most schools know. I would stay away from writing really specifically about the school that they're sending the recommendation to, just so they don't have to change it up a million times every time they send it to a different school for the student. But yeah, take it on a case-by-case basis when it comes to that. And then the other thing, make sure the name of the student is clearly noted in the body of the letter. If the recommender is sending it directly to the school by email or snail mail.
Yeah, it's an obvious thing, and yet the best of us do it. We forget the obvious.
Yeah,
yes.
Exactly. Okay, so let's move on to a big topic, financial aid.
Oh,
so, yeah, I'm going to talk about this in terms of resources and deadlines. I'm not a financial aid expert, and I'm going to preface this whole thing with contact the financial aid office at the school you're applying to. They are usually always willing to help, always willing to talk. They are fantastic resources. They talk and think financial aid all day long, so they are the experts. Contact them. That said, there are some things to keep in mind when applying for financial aid. First of all, the FAFSA stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. And this form, which can be submitted online and can be found in all of the admissions sections of all of our schools' websites, needs to be completed to be considered for any type of federal financial aid. This form needs to be filled out to be considered for any type of federal financial aid. I can't say it enough.
Is there a big deadline on it?
Well, all schools have a different deadline, and those deadlines are clearly indicated in the admissions section, and they usually correspond with the application deadline, and in many cases it's the same deadline.
Great.
Yes. To note, one thing to note, use estimated information on the form prior to filing taxes. So the guardian of the student will be filing this form, hopefully filling this form out. They should use estimated information before they file their taxes, and then later they can revise the data in the form once taxes have been filed. CCS profile. Many of our schools also require this additional form, and CCS stands for College Scholarship Service Profile. And it's a form distributed by the College Board and used to award need-based financial aid. So this form can also be found in a link, usually right underneath the FAFSA, It's always submitted online, and it usually has the same deadline as the FAFSA. So both of these forms need to be filled out to be considered for financial aid at all ACAD schools.
And it's great that you're saying that folks should make sure they understand how they're different. One of them's federal aid, and then the other one's the school you're applying to, but they're using the College Board.
Yep.
It's kind of like the Common App. It's agreed upon data collection system, and then each school makes a decision locally. So
Yep.
one's federal aid you're applying to, and then the second one is that school specific.
Exactly, used to award need-based financial aid. And then for early decision applicants, because you're applying so early and you're filing these forms so early in tandem with that early decision deadline, hopefully when your students receive their admissions decision, they will receive their estimated financial aid awards because that data isn't final yet. So they use that estimated data to give you an estimated financial aid award. So make note of deadlines. Financial aid forms submitted after the posted deadlines will be considered only in light of available resources. So let's say you get your application in on time to the college of your dreams. You forget to file the FAFSA. You get your admissions decision. Yes, I've been accepted into the college of my dreams. Wait a second, I didn't get a financial aid package. What happened? I never filed the FAFSA. You can file it at that point. It will be considered, but only in light of the available resources, which will likely, if you're waiting that long, probably be pretty small, a small chance of having anything available. So the deadline is huge. Get the CCS profile and the FAFSA in on time. And I have just a screenshot of the financial aid section of our website. I've pulled out some great online resources. These have all been vetted by our office. They're clearly listed on our website. They're amazing websites. They're pretty comprehensive. And just to quickly take you through them, there's a website called Career One Stop, and you can search through 7,000 scholarships, fellowships, loans, and other financial aid opportunities. The Smart Student Guide to Financial Aid at FinAid is a free, comprehensive source of student financial aid information, advice, and tools. FastWeb, it's an online resource for finding targeted scholarships based on strengths, interests, and skills, which definitely applies to students interested in studying the arts.
These are wonderful.
Yeah, Federal Student Aid Office of the U.S. Department of Education has a great website. You're going right to the source with this one, and it outlines detailed information on governmental aid. MoneyGeek, they actually just contacted me yesterday. I wasn't even aware of this resource, and it's their guide for graduating debt-free, and it provides an extensive list of alternative ways to pay for college, including some new strategies, which I didn't even think of, such as raising money through online crowdfunding campaigns.
That's brilliant. Which
is pretty neat, yeah, and they outline some case studies of students who have done this and who have been very successful. The scholarshipexperts.com, this is a full scholarship directory, and this is actually the largest scholarship directory on the internet right now. You can view millions of current scholarships in various categories. There are merit-based scholarships, minority scholarships, state scholarships, and my favorite, a category called weird scholarships. And I was looking through this category this morning, and there are two that struck me as really interesting. One is a creative scholarship available right now. It's for $2,000, and it's called the 2015 Zombie Apocalypse Scholarship. And the student who applies should imagine their high school or college has been overrun with zombies. Your math professor, the cafeteria ladies, and even your best friend have all joined the Walking Dead. Use your brain to flesh out a plan to avoid the zombies, including where you would hide and the top 5 things you would bring with you to stay alive. The student's written response must be written in English with correct spelling and grammar, and it must not exceed 250 words.
That's fantastic.
And then there's this, Yeah, there's this other one up there right now. It's due in June, so students can still apply, and it's called Stuck at Prom Scholarship Contest. And it's super creative, so would apply to our audience. But it's a contest for senior prom couples to design and wear prom attire made entirely out of duct tape. The first place couple will receive $10,000 each and
Yes.
$5,000 for the high school hosting the prom. Each entry will be reviewed by a panel of judges, and the potential winners will be selected based on a composite score based on workmanship, originality, use of category-appropriate colors, accessories, and quantity of duct tape used. $10,000. I can totally imagine our students submitting and winning this scholarship.
Absolutely.
So
Yep.
yeah, every little bit counts. Use these online resources. They're fabulous. One last resource that's great, it's called SALT, and it's a free nonprofit-backed educational program. So it's backed by American Student Assistance, and it helps every student who wants a college degree to get it in a financially responsible way. So they offer a number of different tools for finding scholarships, and they also offer a great comparison tool for student borrowing, loans, and you can also develop a personalized student loan repayment plan on the SALT website. So really great resources.
All this looks great. If I had it when I was doing all of this, I would. This is just a marvelous, vast set of resources, and it's all on the ACAD website.
Yep.
Easy to find, right?
Yep, it's in the financial aid section. So there's a resources tab on our homepage, and financial aid is one of the tab options.
Perfect.
Okay, so moving on. I want to jump back to submitting the portfolio.
Okay.
This is probably the most important piece of the application when applying to an art and design school or an ACAD school. Most ACAD schools will require applicants to submit their portfolio digitally, and most of these schools use the online application management system called SlideRoom. So students will be directed to a link when they're in the admissions section of the college's page to SlideRoom, and there they'll be instructed to upload their portfolio, usually 12 to 20 images. Some of our schools have a smaller pool of artwork they'd like to see, between 5 and 10. And there's usually a $10 fee associated with doing this. And the online platform will accept a range of different file types. So students can upload JPEGs or TIFFs or PNGs. Some schools will allow you to submit portfolio works in any media. So videos of dance or videos of film or animation can be submitted in a variety of different formats, and the same goes for audio. And in the SlideRoom interface.
We've used this before. Hey, Leanne, we've used this before in our own organization, and I just can't tell folks how easy it is to create a portfolio, and you can. I think it interfaces with social media, so that the way you can log in is very simple.
Yep.
Yeah.
And ACAD has a SlideRoom site, which I'm going to talk a little bit about on the next slide, where students can upload their artwork apart from the admissions process, and get informal feedback on their portfolio before they apply. In SlideRoom, in the interface, there will be a description field. So after a student uploads their work, whether it's an image or a video or an audio piece, there is an opportunity to give a description. And I always tell students to stay away from giving lengthy concept descriptions, which can be really distracting for someone who's quickly trying to go through a portfolio to get a sense of the student's overall body of work. And stick to using the description field to note the specifics, so size, medium, and title. Where students want to give a little bit of background on a collaborative piece, or a piece where they're showing more process than a finished work, they could use that description field to make those types of notes, but really stay away from long, lengthy concept descriptions. And one really important thing to remember, images should be clear, evenly lit, and fill the frame. So when you're reproducing your artwork or you're helping a student reproduce artwork, really make sure you're setting the student up for success. Even a beautiful piece of work is only as good as how it's represented in the digital format. So clear, steady hand, shoot outside in daylight if possible, fill the frame. If you don't fill the frame, drop your image into any type of photo editing software, iPhoto, crop it, crop out the background, which can be really distracting. And Christy, we showed this slide last time, but I think it's really important content to reinforce.
I think it is, because folks are going to start doing their portfolios over Christmas break and
Christmas break,
right?
that's right. So the portfolio, again, is the most important piece of the student's application. And selection committees only want to see the student's best and most recent artwork. So less is definitely more in this context. Only pull out the best pieces and only the most recent pieces. Steer a student away from putting in a piece from sophomore year. An admissions counselor can always tell when a student is putting in filler. Only want to see recent work. And the work should really reflect the student's range of ideas and interests and experience and abilities in the arts to date. And we always tell or direct students to work from direct observation. It can be a really great way for students to study the foundations of art and design and to learn some very basic foundational skills such as composition, texture, value, line quality. When in doubt, draw from life. That's what we always tell students. We talked about best and most recent work. It's not necessarily to submit work in a wide variety of media. If a student has been working steadily, let's say in painting, and they have a beautiful body of work in oil paint, that can make a really cohesive portfolio. There's no need to pull out some pieces in the series to put in works of other media, just to show that variety. It's not necessarily what the admissions committee is looking for. That said, if a student is working in a wide range of media and their best works fall within a wide range of media, feel free to put them in the portfolio. Quality over quantity, again, spend some time editing through the portfolio and really curate a sampling of your best work. And then another important point, Christy, that I think your audience was interested to know, in most cases, the portfolio does not need to specifically reflect the major the student is interested in. And that's for two reasons. The first reason is that many of our schools offer a foundation year, mandatory foundation year, where the student doesn't actually get to select their major until the end of that first year. And that first year is spent studying the foundations of art and design. So usually drawing, two-dimensional design, and three-dimensional design. And secondly, admissions committees know that high schools aren't really providing the range of course study that their majors reflect. So there isn't necessarily a fashion program or an architecture program in the student's school. However, those are the majors that they're interested in applying to. Again, the student isn't expected to submit works that reflect that major.
Well, that's fantastic. And I think that lets a lot of kids off the hook, and a lot of parents.
It does, yeah.
And it also makes sure they get the foundation they need before they really do choose
their major.
They have to have a common language.
And one thing to keep in mind here, if a student is really interested in going into one of the three-dimensional majors, like architecture or industrial design or sculpture, I would say you definitely want to put some three-dimensional pieces in the portfolio, just to show that, it's in line with your thinking and your ability. But again, it's not required. Original work only, it sounds obvious, but you'd be surprised. No copies, don't submit other people's work. Admissions counselors are smart. Selection committees are smart. They will find out. Students,
I agree with that because I can imagine how often you would get, I know I'm dragging it out, but I get so excited about something you say. A particular group of students from a particular school all apply to the same art and design school, and it's clear that the project was a class project that everyone did and all their work looks the same. That's another example of not original.
that, Christy, I think most work that students are submitting are responses to school assignments.
Okay.
And, you know, I think that as long as the student is original within that assignment, like they're not blatantly copying someone else, that's fine. Most students don't have the opportunity to work on projects outside of school or to take extracurricular courses outside of school where they could make completely original work outside of an assignment.
With guided,
so I would,
yeah.
Yeah, I would say that's absolutely fine, but you definitely don't want to copy other people's work. You don't want to submit other people's work as your own. A lot of plagiarism like that we get from overseas, and that's what I mean by original work.
Oh, wow. I apologize. I didn't realize you were going there. Okay, you mean literally someone else's. I thought you meant, okay, got it. I'm naive.
So, well, you wouldn't know if you weren't, applying to an art and design school or in the classroom. So students should definitely get feedback on their work through their social networks, from their parents, from their art teachers, from people they trust. Two really great ways that they can get feedback on their work is to attend a National Portfolio Day. And National Portfolio Day events are held throughout the application season. So in the fall, I think that the last Portfolio Day event is held in Florida in January, I believe. And students can attend a Portfolio Day. They bring their portfolio, either hard copies of their work, or they can bring their work in a slideshow on their iPad or laptop. And they go and they wait in long lines, and then they speak to admissions counselors and representatives at ACAD schools and other schools who are accredited by NASAD. And this is a great way, great experience. Students can defend their work. They can get some different perspective on their work from someone outside of their social network or their educational network. They can forge, connections with admissions counselors, which can be important, especially at some of the smaller schools. And it's just really good practice, and it's nerve-wracking and scary and fun all at the same time.
You also get to meet a lot of great school reps that give you those wonderful brochures and insights. Sometimes I've noticed that alumni actually are the representatives, and they can tell you what it was like or what it is like to go to school there, what a day is like, and the dorms and student life, I guess.
Right, and I want to say be wary of any school that offers you admission on the spot. That is actually prohibited by the National Portfolio Day policy. I know it is an occurrence and it sometimes happens, but be wary of it, and it shouldn't be happening. And the ACAD Portfolio Review Portal I spoke about earlier, it's at acad.slideroom.com, is kind of like a virtual portfolio day where students can upload their portfolio, and it's free, and they can select the schools, the ACAD schools that they are interested in hearing from, and admissions counselors from those schools will email the students directly with feedback on their artwork. And this is completely separate from the formal admissions process, and this has no bearing on admissions, and students as young as 9th grade can use this online resource. So it's a fantastic opportunity to practice sharing your artwork digitally through this platform that you'll eventually use to apply to the school. It's great to start a dialogue with admissions counselors, and the obvious, it's great to get direct feedback on your work before you actually submit it for application when the stakes are high. And we talked about this in the previous slide. Think about the overall presentation in your portfolio. Images should be clear, evenly lit, and fill the frame.
The review portal, could you say how long is that open as an opportunity for students to get feedback?
Year-round.
Year-round.
It never closes.
I
Yep.
want to make sure. That is so incredible. That's amazing.
Yeah. It's the only resource like it of its kind. So I'm going to start winding down the presentation, and I want to talk a little bit about managing your students' expectations. It's a lot between grades and test scores, developing a competitive portfolio, waiting on financial aid decisions. There are so many moving parts. And the more competitive an application is, the better the student will fare. And it's best for students to really keep their options open and varied. They might have their heart set on one particular school, but it's always good to have a couple of plans behind that in case that doesn't pan out. And just some things that I would suggest, just from my experience in admissions, students should definitely be applying to more than one school. I know that sounds obvious, but you would be surprised. Students should not be afraid to contact the admissions office with questions on the application process if they have any confusion. Admissions counselors are willing to hear from you. They want to hear from you. Students should email, call the office. If they're confused on anything in the application process, they should call. Students should follow the directions. Really follow the application guidelines. If the school is asking for 2 separate letters or statements, submit 2 separate statements. If the school is asking for a specific home test outside of the portfolio, make sure they're following the directions on that. Make sure they're submitting everything on time. That's huge. Don't be blasé about the deadlines. Those are hard deadlines. Follow them. If you're trying to sneak in your application after the deadline, it doesn't look good for you, and chances are you won't be reviewed. Apply for financial aid on time. It doesn't do you any good to apply to a school, get in, and then find out you didn't submit the FAFSA or the CSS profile, and therefore a financial aid package wasn't put together for you, and you cannot afford to go to the school of your dreams, even though you were admitted. And then for students who are admitted and who didn't receive sufficient financial aid, really keep options open. Consider attending a community college for a year and getting some core academic courses out of the way, and then applying to the school as a transfer student. That can always be a good option. Students should also contact the school if they did not get in at a later date to get some feedback on their application and find out from the admissions counselor or the selection committee what did go wrong. I think a lot of people don't know that they can actually do that, especially if you are interested in applying again as a transfer the following year. You want to find out where you went wrong so you don't repeat those mistakes. And I think this is the final slide in my presentation. There are a bunch of resources on the ACAD site. We're redoing our site. I think I told you last time, Christy, in March we should be launching. It's going to be bigger and better than ever. But there are some great resources up right now. We have a great college search tool where you can actually explore ACAD schools and search by location, size, degree, and major. You can view hundreds of ACAD alumni profiles, and you can sort them by major. So if you want to see what students who studied illustration are doing now or fashion design are doing now, you can do that. And then our website has detailed school profiles for each school, which includes data on enrollment, ethnicity, student-to-faculty ratio, graduation rates, tuition, fees. Basically, every data point you would want to know is on these forms, and you can download them or print them as PDFs, and you can compare them easily to each other. So it's a fantastic tool. And then the image on the right, the left-hand side of my screen is just a listing of all of our members, and it's on the About Us section, and they're hyperlinks that go right to the school website. So if you want to toggle between several ACAD school websites, you can easily do that right from the ACAD site. You can find everything in one easy place. And then that's it.
I think it's wonderful, and that slide that showed you being able to filter for schools and print out those reports, I can't think of a more important tool for students. And
and their parents, yeah.
I would print every one of them for every college and just put them all up on the wall and just have a look at all of them. That's a wonderful tool that you guys provide, and then digging down and up and out around the positions and career trajectory of folks. Thank you, Leanne. I appreciate you putting your email address up there. And
Please email me with any questions.
And we'll have a part 3, so if you couldn't get enough of part 1 and part 2, there's a saga. There is a part 3. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. This is Art Schools Network, and we have our conference in Dallas this year. The theme is partnerships. We hope that you're a member. If you're not, we hope you'll join. We want to again thank you for being here today. And again, this recording will be available on our website. Give us about 48 hours. Have a great holiday. Thank you, Leanne.
Thanks, Christy. Thanks, everyone.